Welcome to this week's End of Days Update, coming to you from Tulsa, Oklahoma. We had such a great time last week there in Jackson, Mississippi, and Byram, actually, at Relate Church. Good crowds, hungry people. We had a blast. If you're anywhere near Northern California this next weekend, we'll be at Grace Life Church in Lincoln, California. We'll be there Sunday morning, Sunday night. We'll have a great time. We're coming to you every week to look at the different things that point to the coming of the Lord, and specifically the gathering and arranging of nations for the Ezekiel 38 war, because the rapture is signless. The second coming has so many signs. I think in our book it's about 80 signs in there. But when you watch all the players for that Ezekiel 38 war fall into position and literally do what the Bible said they would do over 2,000 years ago, it's remarkable that we're living in Bible days. So that's why we get into this. I hear some people say sometimes, well, what's the purpose of preaching on end times? Well, to see the finish line. And when you see the finish line, you run faster. There's something about accelerating. It's not about an escape theology. It's about literally viewing how close we are. Paul talked about the baptism 12 times. The coming of the Lord 52 times. For every one verse there is about the first coming, 8 times more about the second coming. There's more documentation in the Bible about what it would look like just before he comes back. Why? He'd want us to have a heads up. He wants us to know that he's about to come. And he wants you happy. He wants you hopeful. All these signs and all this information is because he loves you. He wants to bless you. He wants to encourage you. He doesn't want you downtrodden. He wants you happy. He's not mad at you. He loves you. He loves you. He loves you. And so much is happening that we get to see Jesus so soon. Wow, amazing. We have a lot of work to do in a short period of time, so it's a hustle mentality. So let's pick up what's happened around Israel this last week. You talk about amazing. I probably think this last Saturday night, I was getting ready to preach there in Jackson, Mississippi, and was watching the TV and watching it break out right in front of my eyes. Israel did a preemptive strike against Hezbollah there in Lebanon. They saw all their rocket launchers getting ready, getting loaded and all that, and Israel sent in 100 planes. They hit over 1,000 targets, 1,000 barrels of rocket launchers. Amazing how many rocket launchers they destroyed. But in the midst of that, Hezbollah fired about 320 rockets at Israel. They were going to send 4,000 to 6,000 rockets at Israel, and Israel preemptively struck them and it really brought things to a naught. That was absolutely amazing. They had these plans in the works way ahead of time, so when it did break out, it would be a decisive hit. Now, see what's happening with Hezbollah. They're firing out imprecise and imprecise rockets on their first barrage to kind of confuse Israel's defense system, and then they send out the more guided missiles north of Tel Aviv. So they could start doing that again at any time. It's just kind of amazing that they have that technology. That technology all came from Iran down into Syria and right there in Hezbollah on Israel's northern border. So Israel's completely surrounded. We talk about it every week, but that accomplishment was absolutely amazing. How there were suicide drones that went down. I think there was about 40 of those, and those got all taken out. 100% were taken out by Israel. Well, in the midst of this happening in northern Israel, you have the West Bank breaking out. One of the reports were this is one of the most major military operations ever in Israel's history, going into the West Bank and going and getting out all the terrorists out of there. So that's unfolding right in front of our eyes. At the time of our shooting now, you had a huge UN convoy that looks like they got fired upon by Israeli soldiers. They may have a couple of Israeli soldiers may have fired some at that, because you had Hezbollah and Hamas guys wearing, one of the main leaders is dressed as a woman. The other guys are dressed in surgical gear like they're doctors. So they're faking it, trying to get Israel to get killed. So Israel has to protect itself like that. So obviously, one more time, ceasefire operation didn't happen at all because Hamas turned the ceasefire thing down. And boy, they showed some videos of some of the tunnels that were still in Gaza. And Gaza is still firing rockets from Gaza. It's not just Hezbollah from the north. Gaza is still firing rockets every single day into Israel. So Israel's literally got its work cut out for them. So you had the Houthis there in Yemen firing missiles at American not warships but regular ships. One of them was an oil tanker, got hit, so there's a huge oil spill, and it looked like a couple of tugboats came over to help them, and Iran wouldn't let them, and now Iran's going ahead and letting them get that tugboat out of there so it doesn't fill the Red Sea up with oil. So that's Iran firing from that side. You have so much happening though. you had, this was absolutely crazy. You had NATO turn to Putin because Turkey did a military exercise with Russia. So there's alliances changing right now all over Europe, and those are major things to get ready for the Ezekiel 38 war. Right in front of our eyes, it's pretty dramatic seeing it happen. So you have so much more happening with that. You had in Syria, you had the Bashar Assad literally coming out trying to make amends with Turkey. And that was kind of weird. Turkey kind of brushed him aside. But that alliance that we just saw with Turkey and Russia is a huge deal. The main players for the Ezekiel 38 war are Russia, Turkey, Iran, and Syria. There's several others. But boy, when you see those all come together, it just makes things even that much more crucial. So you have a continuance from China, them making alliances with Russia, which is extremely bizarre about the Middle East. You had Israeli Secretary of Defense Minister Ben Gvir go up on the Temple Mount and say, again, we need to have a synagogue up here and we need to have prayer. So all kinds of stuff's going to break loose if he does that again. And you had Benjamin Netanyahu had to come in and say, look, the status quo for the Temple Mount has not changed so that Jordan didn't freak out. So there's a lot of weird things happening with Jordan under the radar, a lot of weird things happening with some of the nations just north of Israel. So it is bizarre to see them walking toward what they need to do to annihilate Israel, and the verbiage to annihilate Israel. Not even getting to all the schools, the colleges getting ready to come back this next week, where they're all planning on, New York University planning on all kinds of protests for the Palestinians. It was Brown University said, we're going to do all the protesting we want to do. So intriguing to see young people in colleges come against Israel and don't even know what they're talking about. Absolutely crazy. They're coming out saying Israel has no right to their land. Israel had their land before any of these nations even were brought into the earth. So Israel predates every single one of them. And there's even archaeological finds to show how they predate all those. So what an interesting time, though, that there'd be so much anti-Semitism that even Jews in France would have to move back to Israel because they weren't protected in France. You have a whole bunch of things happening right there with Macron doing some bizarre stuff this last week. So, wow, this is it. We're seeing the countdown. We're seeing the days wind down to where we're about to see the Lord come back to the earth. There's so much more happening with other nations like North Korea, literally showing their true colors, and more naval vessels being shipped from the United States over into the Gulf of Oman and in the Mediterranean. So nations are positioning, getting ready for the return of the King. So wow, exciting. Jesus said, lift up your heads, your redemption draws nigh. So that's what we do. We don't get sad, we don't get afraid. All the stuff about war, it could have a tendency to freak you out, but for the church, there is no bad news. If you hear any preaching about the coming of the Lord and it scares you, it's not Bible. In the world, it's going to be very, very scary, but the Bible says that we'll be called up, we'll be raptured. He's not appointed us to wrath, but attain salvation. So wonderful that is our future. So always go back to the Word. How can we look at the Word and give us the things that we need to have so we can tell where we are in time? Number one, Israel regathered. Number two, Jerusalem won back. Jesus said the group of people that sees those two events will not pass away till all is fulfilled. So you got the Hebrew language restored. You got the Ethiopian Jews brought back. You got the fertility of the land of Israel. You got the revival of the Roman Empire. You have the Tower of Babel area, or the Palmyra, rebuilt a Baal worship sign to go right through there so they can start having Baal worship again. That's crazy. And that's where the Tower of Babel was. Why is that crazy? The Talmud said that's the last sign you'll see before the Messiah comes. So you've got tangible things that the Bible said you'd see physically happening in front of you. You got foxes show up on the Temple Mount. You had fish show up in the Dead Sea. You had the Dead Sea turn blood red where Sodom and Gomorrah was. How crazy is that? That was on the Day of Atonement. So you have 172 different species of predatory birds show up in the land. So you have the cleanup crew there. The Bible says right after the Ezekiel 38 war, God calls on the fowl of the air to come clean the land up. 7 years later at the Battle of Armageddon, he calls on the fowl of the air again. So, I mean, you've got the cleanup crew in Israel right now. So you have the ritual baths around the Temple Mount filled up with water, first time in 2,000 years. You have the red heifers, 5 red heifers that were flown from Texas over. They labeled them as service animals. Crazy going down the airport with a cow. Why is it a big deal? During COVID, they couldn't clip their ears, so you have a group of red heifers that don't have a blemish. They were already reclipping the ones now, so they've got to use the ones that they sent from Texas. They're between the year 2 and 3, and that's how old they have to be for sacrifices. So we're there right now, however you do the math. Many other things involved. Russia into Crimea. There was a massive attack by Russia into Crimea the last couple of days. So the thing that came out that I haven't talked about was there was a magazine article in Europe showing how Russia is using tactical nuclear weapons to be set up to literally align themselves with all the cities of Europe. I mean, when it comes out that you've got Russia already doing that, that's absolutely crazy. So they got caught doing that. So we have all these signs, many, many more signs. Men will be lovers themselves. We have selfie sticks. So then you go from there, you go from signs to signals. I mean, you've got signals of the coming of the Lord. What do you have? You have blood red moons on Passover and Tabernacles. I mean, that's absolutely amazing. When's the last time you had 4 in a row like that on Passover and Tabernacles? 1967 when Jerusalem was won back, 1948 when Israel was regathered, and then you have 1492 at the Edict of Expulsion when the Jews were kicked out of Spain. So remarkable that you have blood red moons on those exact dates. And then after that, you have the Bethlehem Star. You have Jupiter, Regulus, and Venus coming together. Bethlehem Star, when Jesus was born, the constellation was Virgo. And then at this last year, when the NBC Nightly News came out and said, hey, we have a celestial event, Jupiter, Regulus, Venus coming together. Bethlehem Star again. What was the constellation? Leo. He's the Lion of the tribe of Judah. So it's amazing. You have all these things happening. And it shows us from the heavens, he's signaling how close he is to returning. I don't need a sign. I don't even need a signal. I have a witness in my spirit, but Jesus is coming so soon. So what do? We help our local church, help our local pastor. We get involved. We don't try to fit church into our life. It is our life. So how exciting to have all these points showing us how close we are. On that Bethlehem Star, you should look at it on YouTube and look at the bonus feature. It's about 2 minutes long. Absolutely one of the most elaborately cool things I've ever seen in my life. Showing the time, there's an eclipse right when Jesus dies on the cross at 3 p.m. on Passover on that Friday. Absolutely amazing. The King's coming back. Wow. We should be shouting it from the rooftops. Jesus, Jesus of Nazareth coming back so soon. How cool is it that we get to watch the earth get ready for it? So let's go for it. Let's help our local church, help our local pastor. Let's be involved. Let's go for it. We're about to see the King. Have a blessed, wonderful week. We'll see you next Wednesday.
Thanks for joining us today at the End of Days Update. If you'd like to be notified every time there's a new post, just go to the edu at josephmorris.com and subscribe to receive email alerts. If these posts and updates have been a blessing to you, please consider making a one-time donation to help get the message out, or even becoming a monthly partner with Joseph Morris Ministries. Thanks again for tuning in to the EDU, and we'll see you next week.